Gentleman from Florida, I guess it's cold comfort to Joshua to hear that the House has been voting on these piecemeal approaches. And I'm not saying that they were ill-motivated, because many of us supported them, but they're not working.
Right.
So it's time for us to learn the lesson, I believe, and I agree with you. Put the Senate resolution on here and open this government back up, and we can do our work in Congress that we were sent to do, that we're paid to do, without stopping the government. And I think those comments are very well put, and I thank the gentleman.
Thank you.
You know, the other thing we heard about, in addition to we need to get something or we need to sit down and talk, is the idea that we have to repeal or do away with the health care law. And I would just say this about being a freshman. You know, we weren't here for these votes. None of us cast a vote either way on the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. But we heard a lot of questions about it, and we took those questions. We took them very seriously, and most of us said, you know, we should try to fix them. But we're also realistic. We've seen that the health care law was passed by Congress a few years ago, signed by the President. It was okayed by the Supreme Court, and it survived a number of additional repeal votes here in the House of Representatives. So it appears that it's here to be with us, to stay. It's been rolling out with mixed reports this week, but I think in many places people are finding hope that they can get affordable health care. Clearly we have more work to do, and I stand here willing to help fix the Affordable Care Act to the extent we need it. I've expressed my own concern about the medical device tax. I think that's something that should be repealed. There's the Cadillac tax. I think we should provide new incentives for wellness. I think we should get out of the way of technology and encourage technology as an approach to lower costs. And I'm willing to get to work on that. But that's not going to be, you know, if that law took a long time to pass, it was very contentious, those problems won't be solved to the satisfaction of the Congress or to the completion of the task within the time we're talking about while shutting the government down. So let's get to work and let's not hold the government up for that. And my final observation about this shutdown is that I'm reminded of when I practiced law and I tried cases, and I liked having a case with a good lawyer on the other side, because a good lawyer knew where he or she was going, and you could tell kind of what the strategy was and where you're going to end up. And I feel in this case like I'm trying a case against a lawyer who's really inexperienced or doesn't know what he's doing, in the sense that I can't figure out where they're going. So we're hoping that if there is some resolution that can happen, we'd love to be a part of it. But I think it starts with passing the continuing resolution that the Senate passed and getting this government open right now. And I'd like to close with a few comments on the other issue that we haven't gotten to, but that I think concerns me greatly, and that's the debt ceiling. Now, it's one thing to argue over the continuing resolution. We've been talking about that and shutting down the government, and that's a bad thing. It's something I hope will end soon, and as I said before, it's something that's entirely within our power to do without the help of the Senate or the President. We just vote for that resolution that the Senate passed, the government would be open tomorrow. But I hear talk about the debt ceiling as though it's the same thing, and it is not. The debt ceiling is a dangerous tactic for negotiation. It's bad business, it's bad economics, and it's bad government. At first I'd start by talking about what it's like to do business in this way. And it occurs to me that my parents must be asking themselves about the people who would play with the debt ceiling. Who raised these people? What we're doing here with the debt ceiling, talking about not paying our debts, it's like getting the credit card bill, opening it up and seeing how much you bought, and deciding at that point, well, no, I've got to control spending. I don't want to pay this. But that's too late to have the discussion. And I remember my parents, my father's a minister, my mom stayed home, worked part-time to help us with college. I have vivid memories of them laying out the bills on the dining room table to make sure they could figure out their cash flow, how were they going to pay each bill, what day of the month each bill was due. And they made every payment, because they always taught me about making sure you kept good credit. We know now about credit scores and how important it is to be on time, and families all over the country understand that kind of approach. For us to take this approach that we are not going to pay the debts that we've incurred is just the wrong way to do business. But it's really terrible economics. The Treasury reported this week, with the government likely to exhaust its cash reserves around October 17th. The Treasury said being forced into non-payment of any of its obligations, and in particular its debt, would spark turmoil in the financial markets and possibly send the country back into a recession as deep as that of 2008 to 2009. And we know we've been coming out of that, but very slowly. We don't want to go back there. In the event, it continues, that a debt limit impasse were to lead to a default, it could have a catastrophic effect on not just financial markets, but also on job creation, consumer spending, and economic growth. Credit markets could freeze, the value of the dollar could plummet, U.S. interest rates could skyrocket, the negative spillovers could reverberate around the world, and there might be a financial crisis and recession that could echo the events of 2008 or worse. This is not some political statement. This is what we're hearing from the Wall Street Journal, from the banking community, from the financial sector. They are saying stay away from this. CNN Money said forget the current government shutdown. Economists say it's the upcoming debt ceiling impasse that could plunge the nation into a recession. About half of the 22 economists surveyed by CNN Money say a recession will be unavoidable if Congress fails to raise the nation's debt ceiling before the Treasury runs out of cash later this month. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's not get to that point. Mr. Speaker, we cannot mess with the debt ceiling. The government shutdown is bad enough. We're kind of playing around the edges. I urge that we put the Senate resolution before the House so we can vote on it, open this government tomorrow. But let us not play with the notion, let us not suggest to anyone that America won't pay the debts it's incurred. Finally, from an article called After the Shutdown, posted by James Surowiecki, I just offer this. And he's speaking in partisan terms, but anyone who thinks this, I think it applies to. This is why the Republican approach to the debt ceiling is not, as people like Zeke Miller of Time have argued, the kind of hostage-taking that's a standard way of doing business in Washington. This is really an attempt to remake the legislative process itself, and to do so by threatening to do something, default, that no one, including the people making the threat, believes to be in the best interest of the United States. We can't be sure of exactly what would happen if the U.S. stopped paying its bills, but at the very least it would lead to havoc in the bond market and the financial system, which depends on U.S. Treasuries as risk-free collateral, higher interest rates, and an immediate hit to economic growth. It's not a road that anyone should want to go down, and Mr. Speaker, in my view, it's not a road we should even be considering going down. And so as bad as the continuing resolution is and the fight over the shutdown, I know that just behind us is a much more dangerous prospect, and I wanted to warn of that. Finally, just to suggest to folks that I have offered two bills that would provide an alternative and would help us deal with the national debt. And they would work very simply like this. When debt was declining as a percentage of the economy, which means we have it under control, the debt ceiling would adjust without a vote, payments would go out. And when debt started to increase as a percentage of the economy, which means we're not having it under control, we all understand that long-term debt can't continue to rise as a percentage of the economy without hurting our economic future. But in that case, we needed a mechanism to do something more than just yell at each other and call each other names, which I know the freshmen that were with me tonight are still amazed that that's what happens here, but that's what happens way too often. We need a mechanism to force a discussion of really how to manage the debt. And our bill would provide that if we are in the condition where debt's rising as a percentage of GDP, and the President and the leaders of Congress didn't do anything about it, which is a condition we find ourselves in today, then individual members, Mr. Speaker, would be able to propose their own measures without the blessing of leadership, but with the sponsorship of only 50 of their colleagues to force a discussion on how to manage that debt and get it under control. That's just one idea, but at this point, I think it's the only idea on the table to actually avoid this in a constructive way. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the chance to offer some thoughts on these issues with my colleagues, and with that, I'll yield back the balance of my time.